But thank you everybody for joining us. Today, as you guys know, oh no, my computer froze again. We had this problem last time too. I apologize in advance, guys. Let me stop sharing and then share again. All right, I apologize. My deck has froze. So we're just kind of do off the top of my head. So technology, right guys? You guys know what I'm talking about. So we are here today with Chief DiBartolo from ITS, who's gonna give us a little bit more in-depth information. I know a lot of you guys had questions about internet connectivity, what's going to happen when our kiddos go back to school. So welcome, Chief. Thank you so much for giving us your time to join us and give us your expertise to answer the parents' questions.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And I had a deck with your bio and ready to go. So if you want to introduce yourself a little bit more and tell our parents a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. My name is Phillip DiBartolo. I'm the Chief Information Officer at CPS. I've served in this capacity for just over 5 years. I've been an employee in the district since 2011 and worked in a consulting capacity in support of the district previous to that. So all told, about 15 or 16 years of CPS experience. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan. I reside in Logan Square, and I'm actually very excited to talk today about Chicago Connected and some of the other supports that CPS is offering to help bridge the digital divide. Just looking over some of the questions that came in advance, clearly we know that there are have-nots out there that don't have the benefit of internet access. And that will rely very mightily on CPS for computing power to bridge the homework gap. So these are things that I wanted to talk through with a keen focus on Chicago Connected, because there have been some pretty exciting developments there that I wanted to let you all know about. And there's also, I think, a fair amount of misinformation out there about the program, and hoping that we can address that, tackle some of the roadblocks that people have run into with that program. Because it's really important to us to get that to all 100,000 students that it's scaled for.
Thank you, Chief. And I know you have a short presentation. I think my computer's ready, so let me present the deck for you. Bear with me as I try to present again, guys. For some of you that have done these with me, last time I had a little bit of an issue, but I think we're back in the game. All right, I think here we are. Chief, just let me know when you want me to advance.
Yeah, I think we can advance. And what I'm really going to try to do for folks that are participating is move through this pretty quickly so we can really focus on the meat of this, which are the questions and concerns from parents. So if I talk a little bit fast, I'm happy to come back to this later, but I really want to make sure we get to dialogue. So again, high-level details on Chicago Connected. Launched in June of 2020, Chicago Connected is currently the largest no-cost internet program of its kind in the country. We've got capacity to serve 100,000 students. Right now, we currently have 57,000 active students in the program. So the good news for parents is that there's a lot of room for growth. This past November, we've even opened this up to all students that are eligible for free and reduced meals are eligible for this program by default. The program covers T-Mobile hotspots for families or wired internet access through Comcast or RCN. I'll talk a little bit about, how we delineate between, which family would get slotted for which solution in a little bit. But long story short, what we've tried to do with this program is worked with different types of partners to ensure that regardless of the internet situation in your particular neighborhood, we're hoping that we can bridge the gap. Another important component of this program that a lot of folks don't know about is that we're working with roughly 30 plus community-based organizations, folks like Metropolitan Family Services, Austin Coming Together, Northwest Side Housing Center, amongst a host of others. And what's really cool about this part of the program is that not only are they helping us get the word out about the program and kind of building a level of trust, which I'll touch on a little bit later. The other thing is that they're going to be offering digital literacy programs for the entire household once they're connected. So we hope that, for folks who maybe are not that familiar with technology, that once they're connected, we can start to, provide some training and open up the doors to telehealth or telework opportunities. And then, of course, the most important role of the CBO is they are a vital conduit for us folks running the program to let us know what's really happening. Hey, I picked up the phone and called, and I'm running into an issue. So the community-based organizations are really, for lack of a more elegant descriptive, are connective fiber with the neighborhoods and the schools. And we're hoping to leverage them to maximum effectiveness as we proceed. We can go to the next slide. So a couple of things that I wanted to address head on, because it was apparent in some of the questions that have been coming in, which are very much consistent with the material in the FAQs on our website, which I think will pop up in the chat at some point. Is that there's a fair amount of misinformation about the program. So while initially we rolled this out slowly to ensure that we could pace and that we would learn as we went and not kind of overpromise and underdeliver, we were very deliberate about kind of opening this up to students that had a wide variety of eligibility indicators. But as we've moved forward and kind of gotten our sea legs under us, the program is now open to all free and reduced meal students, regardless of what other programs they might be in. And this, of course, opens it up to a very large swath of students in our district. Second, and this is a very common misconception, and I tell you this as someone who has seen the contract with our great ISP partners, payment of a previous unpaid bill or not lack of payment for a previous unpaid bill is not a barrier to entry for this program. We'll talk a little bit more about how to navigate that because folks continue to run into that issue. And I want to speak to that for a little bit when we get into the Q&A. But again, if you have an outstanding bill with a Comcast or an RCN, and because of financial reasons, you are not able to pick that up and have to drop the service, it is okay for you to transfer to our program. You do not have to pay that outstanding bill to enter. The ISPs may not waive that cost long-term for you, but long story short, you can get into this program without having to pay that bill. And this is a really important point that I wanted to stress for families out there. And then finally, another point of confusion, once you're in this program, it is a 4-year term for the program. So as long as you are not moving out of the city, students, households are going to be eligible to continue to enjoy this internet access for 4 years. And that's due to, great partnership with the city of Chicago, the application of some federal funding, and then of course, just some, tremendous philanthropic contributions from Citadel, the Crown family, Pritzker Traubert, the Obama Foundation, and a wide variety of others who've really gone the extra mile to make sure that this was something that was led us on the path to true sustainability for our families. Some other really big news that I wanted to share. In the last week, both of our primary internet service providers have effectively doubled the speed of their low-cost program. So we call it Chicago Connected, but that is really for RCN, their Internet First program. And for Comcast, it's their Internet Essentials program that we've kind of branded under Chicago Connected. But in the last week, they both moved to 50 megabit per second speed from 25. And they're guaranteeing a minimum of 5 megabit per second upload speed, up from 3. So this is a really big deal for us. And really is reflective of the fact that we've started to collect information from families, and we're finding that families that might have multiple students need a little bit more horsepower in this program. So our partners have really gone to bat here, and this is something that has also been a national refrain. But this is something that we're really excited about and has now started to filter its way into all the fresh waves of marketing to eligible families. Very quickly, I've included some really important numbers on the screen for both Comcast and RCN. Of note on the RCN side, it's really important to call the local number as opposed to the 1-800 number. I'll get into that in a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure that if folks are eligible for this program, definitely, I hope we send this deck out later, but take note on these numbers. These are definitely the ones to call. Finally, relative to support of this program and the more writ large distribution of technology over the last 11 months for our students and households, wanted to include some very important information. Last spring, we launched for the first time a dedicated help desk for parents and families. So traditionally, the CPS IT team had a help desk for teachers, schools, staff, network offices, but we really didn't have an offering for parents. So we now have a parent help desk that is there to, number one, broker any issues between eligible families and the ISPs relative to joining Chicago Connected. But as well, they're a resource for any questions that you might have on CPS learning platforms or the many of the thousands of devices that have been loaned out. So this is a valuable resource. And I can tell you that based on additional feedback we've gotten from parents, that we're looking at potentially offering flex hours, making sure we have more multilingual speakers on the line. And these are things that have been really good pieces of feedback from parents that we're working on instituting over time. Obviously, right now we are squarely focused on making sure it is a smooth return to in-person learning for our students. But these are things that are happening behind the scenes in parallel to make sure that we're really serving to buttress families and make sure that they have all the supports that they need. And then again, I mentioned that there are a wide variety of different community partners that are working with us on this program, and we're terribly excited about that as well. We can proceed. Again, some of the top questions from families, I'm just going to hit this at a really high level so we can get into the so we can get into the questions. Check with your local school's admin office or use the online eligibility check tool on the Chicago Connected website to see if you're eligible. It really just requires entry of a student ID. I wanted to kind of tip my cap to your local school leaders who have done just tremendous work in helping to get the word out on this program, in addition to a wide variety of other things they're doing to support families. This program doesn't work without the local school, and that includes principals, clerks, teachers, everyone. So really what we're trying to do now, we're at this point in the iteration of the program where we're really trying to build better support materials for the local schools so they can field some of the questions that might come in from parents, and also kind of improve those points of connectivity with the local CBOs. But bottom line, if you're not sure if you're eligible, your local school has the most updated roster, and we do have an online tool for those that are somehow able to finagle that access, knowing that the audience we're trying to reach doesn't have internet. So I do see the irony in there. Relative to after confirming that you're eligible, there are really two separate paths. If you are eligible for wired service, you're going to want to reach out to the primary internet service providers, being Comcast or RCN. If you're eligible for a hotspot, you should work with your local school, who will put in a request if they don't have a local hotspot available to ITS, and we will send one or many hotspots to the principal, depending on how many they request. And that will be fulfilled within 48 to 72 hours. So the turnaround time for the hotspots typically is a little bit faster than the wired access, given that, kind of have to schedule that appointment through the ISPs. But nonetheless, either way, it's a fairly straight line next step. And it's where we want to hear back from you if you attempt to perform that outreach and run into any issues. That's where we're continuing to bang out any kinks in the program as we seek to make this as smooth as possible for families. And then the final step, this is a living and breathing program, so to speak. We're learning new things every day. So frequently asked questions are things that we're going to continue to add to, because when you roll out something at this scale in a city that is complex with new neighborhoods that have variants or their own unique nuance from community to community, we're finding things that we maybe didn't expect when we first launched the program, and it takes us a little bit of time to work through it, but we certainly make sure that frequently asked questions are up to date as often as we can. I think we can proceed. Okay. Again, just very quickly, there are a lot of folks involved in this effort, and this is not CPS standing alone. And this is one of the reasons why we feel so optimistic about the future of this program. This is a strong partnership between City Hall, CPS, our philanthropic funders, United Way, Comcast, RCN, T-Mobile. We've got Kids First Chicago, who's done amazing work helping to stand up the CBO apparatus and actually wrote a very important paper that helped serve as a catalyst to getting us off the ground. So Kids First Chicago was a vital partner for us as well, and definitely wanted to mention them. But, this is not, CPS standing by themselves to offer this, you've really seen an earnest effort from almost every quarter of the community and city government to make this work. That's why we're so excited about this program. Bernice, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Chief, for that. As we do that, thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so we can get into that Q&A that we've been talking about for a little bit. Let me stop sharing. All right. And thank you so much. There's a lot of really good information. We are going to put some of those links you mentioned in the chat in a little bit. But also for folks that are joining us, we always send out an email the day after the session. We're going to send you a copy of the deck that we shared today, and then we'll include all those links. So just in case you missed anything, don't worry, you'll get it tomorrow via email. So when you guys RSVP, we already have your contact information. So thank you so much for that. So we're going to get started with some of the questions. As you guys know, for our participants, when you guys RSVP, we asked if you have any questions just so that we can get prepared for those. We will open the chat 15 minutes before the end of the session in case there's other questions. As you're learning all this information, maybe there's some new questions that pop up. So we'll do that. So we'll, if time permits, we'll get to those questions as much as we can. Okay, but again, we're going to go through first the ones that were submitted through the RSVP. So the first one that I have for you, Chief, is by a parent, Vanessa Lopez from Orozco Elementary. And her question is, I'm concerned about the internet efficiency during class instructions. Are you prepared with connectivity issues once the kids are back in person?
This is really a great question from Ms. Lopez, and one that I think is probably top of mind for a good number of parents on the horn. Or on the call, I should say. This will effectively be the first time we've run a synchronous learning model from within our schools at scale. And the CPS team is taking steps at several levels to mitigate any bandwidth concerns. First, we've deployed some configuration changes to some of our applications to ensure they are less of a drain on local device limitations. So remember, performance issues with a local device can sometimes look like a bandwidth issue. So we first want to be sure that the devices themselves and the applications that we use as enterprise standards are adequately tuned. Second, the district is currently in the process of doubling bandwidth at every elementary school. I will repeat, we are doubling bandwidth at every elementary school in the district as I speak. This work is set to be complete at the latest by mid-March. Third, we've partnered very closely with Teaching and Learning to issue school and teacher guidance for brokering the different types of learning models in a manner that leverages the available bandwidth effectively. For example, school infrastructure is not built to support all of our in-person students participating via streaming video, nor do we expect or promote this type of use for streaming video. We expect that in-person students will interact with their teacher in person. The instructional guidance provides examples for when in-class streaming is effective and appropriate. So there we try to make sure that we provide good practice guidance. We try to make sure that we are actually looking at bulking up the network itself. And then, of course, we're also looking at our applications and devices to make sure that they have the requisite degree of horsepower, as it were, to ensure that we don't run into bandwidth or performance issues. I hope that answers your question, Ms. Lopez.
Yeah, no, thank you for, and thank you for clarifying that. I think a lot of parents had that idea, right? That we're going to go sit in the classroom and we're all going to be on video. So thank you for sharing that and making that clear that there's going to be specific protocols and procedures for our teachers and students to follow in the classroom. Thank you so much for that. The next question that we have is from a community member, Felipa Luna. She doesn't mention what community, but her question is, what are the most difficult challenges for delivering of high-speed internet services and computer devices for students in the district?
So I'll focus on the internet services by and large, because I think that's a bit more sticky problem. And I'll opine a little bit, but I think it's a really important topic. So if I were to distill it to 3 or 4 main points, trust. Trust is an extraordinarily difficult challenge for the Chicago Connected program. We're trying to outreach and reach, I should say, folks in the community that, don't have access to internet and have been on the other side of the digital divide for quite some time. This is typically, the same parts in our communities in the city where they've had promises made and not kept previously. And there are still a lot of folks that kind of adhere to the maxim, well, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So, trust is actually the number one barrier that we found as we've gone and tried to promote this program over the last 8 months, that a lot of folks, feel that, hey, it's no cost to get in, but I know I'm going to get a bill at the end. And trying to allay those fears is a lot of work. And what we've really had to do was kind of work on borrowed trust to get better. So, whereas there might be some parents that don't necessarily trust CPS, they will trust a local principal. They will trust a local teacher. They will trust a community-based organization. They might trust, an external firm like Kids First Chicago, who's known for going out and working in the community. So really trust has been the first barrier, and that might seem very simple, but at the end of the day, if folks don't have faith that this is a program that can deliver, we're not going to get them in the door, and the rest is moot.
Mhm.
Second is accessibility. Naturally, most eligible families do not have the benefit of internet access, an email account, even a cell phone. So this is compounded by the fact that a door-to-door grassroots campaign really wasn't an option for us over the last 8 months in a COVID environment. So access to the folks we're trying to reach is actually a barrier for us. And we've tried multiple modes of communication. We've done TV ads, we've done radio spots, we've done billboards by the expressway, we've done flyers, we've done emails, we've done text messages, we've done US postal mail. It's really, we're canvassing as many channels as we can to make sure that we're reaching folks. But accessibility, I'd say, is number two. Number three is consistency in messaging. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, there is a lot of misinformation out there, and some of that information might actually come from different quarters of the program. If everybody, it doesn't have access to the latest and greatest information. Some folks are still receiving mixed messages that think, pre-existing debt is a barrier to entry, or that they have to provide a social security number to join. So to solve this problem, it's really going to be working a little bit more closely with our program partners, who each have national help desks that might not be familiar with some of the regional programs that are running throughout the country. And I found that where we really need to double down as a program team is make sure that the messaging is consistent from all program partners. I'd say if I were to look at the final area where we've had challenges, it's just token of the fact that this project is kind of greenfield. Like I said earlier, it's the largest of its kind, and we launched it in the midst of a global pandemic. So we're running into some use cases that we really didn't plan for that require thoughtful deliberation on handling. And I'll give you a few examples. We've had to figure out how to navigate permutations in service offering for eligible families that have changed address. So, hey, I was eligible for wired access, but now I've moved to another part of the city and Comcast might not be available there. What do I do? How to handle an emergent split custody situation where someone might have wired access at one location. Now it's split custody. Do they get wired access at the second location, or do we give them a hotspot to float between both locations? How to handle multiple families that might be living at one official city address. So these are all examples of some of the outlier challenges. These are not necessarily pervasive, but it's these outliers that really drive confusion and, to be honest, a fair amount of frustration in our customers. So this is where we're really working to get better and kind of, tighten the lines of communications with all of our partners to make sure that, if we have to figure something out that we didn't expect, we do it pretty damn quick. So, our partnerships with the CBOs and the local schools are going to be critical to the identification of these issues as we move forward.
Yeah, no,
Hope
thank
that
you, Chief.
helps.
Yeah, no, it does help. It's a lot of info. And I think a couple of the points that you made, right? Like we're trying to reach some of the folks that are not, they don't have internet, they don't have, you're trying to reach them via mail. So like I say in every meeting, I know it's like a broken record, right? We need to have the correct information from parents. We need to have the correct address, the correct phone number. So it's really important if people are joining us who have moved, who have changed their number, that you contact your local school and talk to the clerk and have her or him change that information in the system so that you're able to get the most up-to-date information. The other thing that you mentioned is about social security number. I know when we were doing outreach for parents, that was one of the questions. So I'm really glad you brought that up and made it clear to our families that need the support. And sometimes that's something that they're scared of, so they just won't sign up. Like you said, that trust, right? They're asking me for this, so I'm not going to join. So thank you so much for clarifying that.
Sure. If I could actually offer one more clarification, though,
Yeah.
because I didn't want that answer to come off as though it's on parents and on schools to get the right address information.
Mm-hmm.
It is certainly critical to get updated address
Mm-hmm.
information into our systems when there is a change of address.
Mm-hmm.
But really, the thrust of what I was getting at was that we as a program are
Mm-hmm.
focused on doing a better job of making sure that the messaging is consistent. And when these unique problems come in, that we consider outliers because they're not frequent issues, but it's the ones that lead some families to get stuck for potentially a long time. So we're working at getting better in that regard. And I just wanted to be sure that, it
Yeah.
wasn't perceived that this is on the parent or on the
Oh,
school to make something happen. This is
for
where we
sure.
need to do a better job.
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely. I think we're all working in partnership, right? We all need to work together to make sure that we're all providing the information, they're getting the information. No, so thank you so much. Definitely.
Sure.
The next question that we have is from a parent, Kearney. Sorry if I misspelled or I mispronounced the names, from Brownsville Classical. And the question is, what can we do to assist with the digital divide? There are so many issues with the internet speed as well as the devices not being able to support the tasks students are doing or trying to accomplish while being in their Google Meets.
I think there are two layers to this question. The notion of how do we bridge the digital divide and what efforts have we undertaken to date, and then ensuring performance when we get there. Relative to bridging the digital divide, we've distributed over 200,000 devices to students. We are equipping classrooms with synchronous learning equipment. And just making sure that we have the right tools in place from a device standpoint. Obviously, I mentioned earlier that relative to internet access, we feel that having 100,000 seat no cost internet program is a pretty good start. We don't want to stop there, but we feel that relative to at least taking the initial steps to bridge the divide, the allocation of over 200,000 devices over the last 11 months, in addition to stand up of really the largest program of its kind, is really kind of the first half to that equation. Relative to ensuring performance, that's more of a nuanced question. The tech guy in me will tell you that the troubleshooting steps for individual cases will vary. Root cause for performance issues can reside on the device itself, if it's a CPU problem, or at the connectivity level. So it can really depend on how many applications are running on a machine, the strength of your signal, if it's a Wi-Fi. I mean, there are a wide variety of factors, which is why we've stood up that parent help desk that I mentioned earlier as a resource for parents to call in, kind of report what they're seeing if this is an issue at home, and then we can kind of tick down the list of questions to figure out and isolate exactly what the issue is. I can tell you definitively that the devices that we purchase for student use, they meet the required specification to run meets. So on the connectivity side of it, our ISP providers, just announced that they're effectively doubling their speeds. And that should also greatly assist in any bandwidth related issues for a large swath of our Chicago Connected customers. So, relative to what the individual parent can do, I would always encourage you to reach out to my help desk, because, the more intel that we're getting, I think that, there's a propensity sometimes if there's a long hold time that, folks will get frustrated and maybe suffer in silence. That's why we also have a self-ticketing module for parents. So I would just encourage you to reach out and know that there are some folks on this side that are here to help and looking at it. And the more information we can get as to where folks are running into issues, the stronger our service offering is going to be ultimately. But relative to making investments in technology and getting devices into the hands of students and trying to stand up a program that, bridges the digital divide that quite frankly could be getting larger by the day with this economy, we feel we've taken at least the right initial steps and look to simply expand from here. I don't know if that was too nebulous or wide ranging an answer and there was a more specific technical question, but I hope that this at least provided some context.
No, and I think it did, right? You touched on some really key points that parents can really think about. But again, that Q&A is there, like you mentioned, right? And reaching out to that help desk if they have very specific questions, they can call there, and then somebody will be there to assist them. So thank you so much for that, Chief. The next question that I have is from a teacher, Marisol from Volta Elementary. And she says on her question, I'm trying to help a parent with internet access. She has been bounced around and needs help. How can she help her?
So yeah, if this is a Chicago Connected eligible parent, we can help. I mean, bottom line, we can help regardless. If it's a Chicago Connected parent, I would like you to reach out to the parent helpline at 773-417-1060. Secure a ticket number. Once you have that ticket number, it means that I know that it's in custody of my team and I can start to drive to a solution. We've got some really great people that are in place to help broker these types of issues. And, I want parents to consider CPS a reasonable outlet if if they're running into problems elsewhere. So I meet every day with my team to monitor the status of tickets and aging of those tickets. And we also meet very frequently with, all three of our service providers. So once we have a ticket in the system, we will absolutely advocate and break down any barriers to getting you the access you need. And Marisol, if you're a teacher at Volta, you probably have my email address. If you want to send me the ticket number after you have it, I'm more than happy to help you personally with this.
Thank you, Chief, for that. So we'll make sure she gets that information. Thank you so much.
I have a part two to that answer, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
That's how we would handle the Chicago Connected eligible parent. For a parent that might be seeking help with internet access that might not be eligible, and again, the largest swath of our community is eligible for Chicago Connected. Then we've offered some additional guidance and support on other low-cost internet programs. I can also tell you that there are a couple of other deals that we have cooking where we might potentially be able to expand access. I really can't speak to them this moment, but can let you know that we are looking at other options outside of Chicago Connected. And again, Marisol, if you wanted to have a conversation to learn more about how to address this at Volta, I'm more than willing to have a sidebar.
Thank you, Chief. And as soon as we have that info, well, stay tuned, right? Information to come once you have that information. Thank you, Chief. The next question that we have is from a parent, Miriam from Elcott. And the question is, what do parents say to reps at Comcast or RCN when the ISP reps have no idea what the Chicago Connect is?
Yeah, and I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. So for some background, we've been hearing this from our community-based organizations, over the last, I'd say, month and a half, 2 months, in a little bit, higher volume. And we're working very closely with our provider partners to cure. As you know, both Comcast and RCN are pretty large companies with national helplines. In some cases, all of the reps on those national lines might not necessarily have an immediate command of all of the different service offerings that those companies are offering throughout the country. So really, the best step when you're on the phone is to identify yourself as Chicago Connected right away. If you self-identify as Chicago Connected and provide a code, but you still get no help, I would prefer that you reach out to the CPS Parent Helpline, and then we can escalate back to the ISP with your specific information and help you get the access that you need. Again, I really want you to consider the CPS Parent Helpline kind of your backstop. But again, the ISPs are great partners and they're working very hard to improve this program as we go. And a lot of this is also incumbent on making sure that, again, as I alluded to earlier, that we're doing training for all the component parts within the program to make sure that we know how to handle these types of questions. So really, this is just another charge for us to tighten it up a bit to make sure that folks don't get bounced around. I mean, at the end of the day, that is the worst possible scenario because you are piling frustration on top of frustration. So my advice is if you're reaching out to the ISP that's assigned to you and you're not getting the response you need, try our helpline, put a ticket in, and we'll broker that for you as quickly as we can. I'll also tell you that I take many direct calls from school principals looking for advice on such topics. So use our parent helpline, stay in good communication with your principals. We're here to support them and we're here to support you as well.
Thank you, Chief, for that. Yeah, like you said, right, it's frustrating when they get bounced around, and we can understand parents. So we're here to help and make sure that I put the phone number in the chat, and we'll email it to everybody. So please make sure you guys use that. Thank you, Chief. The next question that we have is from a parent. Zamora is the last name, from Berry Elementary. And her question was in Spanish. I'm going to say it in Spanish and then translate it or interpret it. It says, ¿por qué las computadoras de la escuela no pueden usar la aplicación de Zoom? So why can't CPS computers run Zoom?
Sorry, I had a problem running
Okay.
my own computer for a moment. It's not a matter of CPS computers not being able to run Zoom. We're on a Zoom call right now. But CPS is largely a Google partner, and we ask that schools use Google Meets for the interoperability with Google Classroom and the larger Google ecosystem that's at work at CPS. Google also allows us to exercise better privacy controls. However, Zoom is not expressly forbidden. The district does leverage Zoom for larger events, the Board of Education meeting, town hall gatherings, Ask the Expert series. So there are certainly times and places for Zoom, but when we're really looking at governing what happens in the classroom, we try to make sure that we're leveraging a fairly consistent tool set because that level of interoperability is important to allow for more timely support. And it also ensures that if there is a problem somewhere in the ecosystem, we're dealing with one primary partner to help troubleshoot those issues. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it did, Chief. Thank you so much. The next question that we have is from Esther from Berry Elementary, and her question was also in Spanish, so let me read it in Spanish and then I'll translate. It says, una familia cuando en un estudiante ya recibió un hotspot en una escuela, ¿puede su hermano recibir otra en otra escuela? So in a family, when one student received a hotspot from his school, can his brother who attends another school receive a hotspot from that particular school?
Yeah, we've gotten this question quite a bit. First, a note on the hotspot program from T-Mobile. The hotspot program is unique in that it offers true unlimited coverage, which is fairly unprecedented and something we're super proud of. And again, T-Mobile have been excellent partners. But we also understand that, unlike a wired connection, where a customer can have, kind of a higher expectation of bandwidth or consistency of bandwidth, the speeds on a hotspot can vary as it's dependent on a veritable plethora of environmental and usage factors. So in most cases, we are willing to extend an additional hotspot if there are multiple students in the household. We've really been taking this on a case-by-case basis, but truthfully, I can't recall having turned away too many students. I think our rule of thumb is that we feel that a hotspot should suffice for 2 students. But again, depending on the nature of their schedules and what they might be doing simultaneously, we do realize that there could be some limitations there. And again, this is where, where we see a need, we fill it. So yes, it is certainly possible to get multiple hotspots for family if you have many student learners in the home.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So they would be able to call the hotline and ask those questions if they or their school?
The first step in kind of getting another hotspot is to go to the local school. We don't send out hotspots directly from our central distribution apparatus to parent homes. We really rely on the school partnership because when we partner with the school, we can also make sure that the serial number for the device that's given to the student is actually logged in our asset management system. That's a really important piece for us. We need to have that audit trail, and working in concert with the school allows us to do that.
Thank you, Chief. So again, really important to have that communication with the school and call the school. The clerks are there. I know our admin are there and willing and able to help parents. So please make sure you guys do that. The next question that I have for you from Yasmin Patino from Richards Elementary, she also has a student at Curie High School. It's in Spanish, so let me read it once more and then I'll do the English. So, el padre tendrá que pagar las computadoras quebradas. ¿Cuál es el costo y habrá plan de pago? So in the English, do the parents need to pay for broken computers? What will be the cost, and will there be a payment plan for all these computers that you mentioned that we were, letting students borrow through this process?
This is actually a question that I've gotten with increasing frequency over the last several months, as I think, we've seen a fair amount of attrition on some of the devices that were initially loaned out to students. The district's current position is to absorb the cost of damaged devices and not ask parents for payment. But we do ask that such equipment be returned to the school so that it can be repaired and is simply not discarded. There's plenty of useful life in most of these devices because a lot of these devices were brand new when they went out the door. So we want to be sure that we don't just junk them as assets and that we get them back so we can get them fixed. Local school principals do have the right, though, to refuse a device if equipment is broken repeatedly. The district will continue to assess our position on multiple device breaks per student or per family as we move forward. But at this time, there is no policy that requires that parents pay for broken computers. We only ask that if it's broken, don't throw it out. Please bring it in so we can get it fixed or at least assess if it has the capacity to be fixed.
Thank you, Chief, for that. And you're right, we're getting a lot of questions like that from parents. So thank you so much for clarifying that. I'm going to go to some of the questions in the Q&A. I know some parents have been putting some questions up there. One that I see, it's in Spanish. I'm going to read it in Spanish and then translate.
You might need to help me.
I have something from Luz Maria, and her question is, yo sé de una persona que no le dieron el servicio porque tenía una deuda, otros porque viven en el basement. So her question is, she knows someone who didn't have access to Chicago Connect because they had a debt, but it wasn't them, it was the people who lived in the basement. So what can they do about that?
Yeah, so this is kind of that cohabitation thing that I mentioned is an outlier, but something that we didn't expect that was one that we need to deal with. So if someone is seeking internet access or gets tagged for wired access and they're living at a home that basically splitting an address with someone else who also has access, our solution there is to give that family a hotspot. And that's what we've been doing. So it just makes it a lot easier. There are some, bookkeeping challenges to having two families at one address, with the ISPs. So what we've done is just provided hotspots. And in both cases, debt is not a barrier to entry to the program. So again, I just want to kind of continue with that refrain because it's a really important one. So in this case, I know that folks who've called our help desk, we've since given out instructions that anyone who calls in this condition, they shouldn't be cut off. They shouldn't still remain on the other side of the digital divide because the family living in the basement needs it as much, if not more. So in this case, we go with a hotspot or two, depending on how many students are in the family.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Chief. And I think that's really good to know because I know there's parents who constantly had that question. They have the concern. I know some of our
Sure.
families are in that situation. So thank you for clarifying that. Hopefully that helps a lot of the people. Even if they're not here, we're recording this, so we'll put it up on YouTube. They can see it.
Good.
Or if you know someone, please let them know so that we can get those folks connected. So thank you, Chief. We have another question from Helen. She says, hi, Chief, and thank you so much for being here. Her question would be, when should students report computer issues? It's hard to know when we need to log in, close windows, turn video off, etc., versus when we should actually report that there's a problem. It seems like your team will need some of this feedback as you continuously improve the digital student experience.
Helen, this is a really good question. So there is guidance that we've put out through our TechCo forum and through other means. And I want to make sure that I follow up with Bernice to make sure that we get that out to everybody who participated. Here's what we don't want and what I'm always fearful of. I'm worried about we need to give you that guidance so that the teacher doesn't de facto lose instructional minutes by trying to do that type of troubleshooting themselves, right? We need to protect that time. So I think that what I can do as a follow-up is just send out some of the guidance that we've sent along. I would say that, the de facto standard is we definitely prefer that people try a couple things first, right? So if you're having, performance issues, how many windows do you have open? Let's take a look. See if we can do by process of elimination, find out if it's a connectivity issue, if it's a device issue, or if it's a platform issue. Is Google having a problem? And I think it's a fair ask and one that I can follow up on because I know the guidance is there, but I don't know that it's necessarily been disseminated to parents in a way that's meaningful. So that's a really good call out and something that Bernice, I'd like to follow up with you and the FACE team afterwards on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like you said, it's great to get this feedback and to know so that, like you said before, right, we could get better. We could really help the folks that need that support. So thank you. And we'll definitely do that.
Well, and to be honest, I also think that, this is where some frustration comes in because inherently the tech response, not to obfuscate, we're going to say, okay, we need to figure out the what. So we might ask 5 or 6 questions, and that can be frustrating for someone who just wants an answer. But the fact of the matter is, it could be multiple variables that are causing an issue, so we have to work through it. But that said, giving parents the armament to kind of work through that themselves before they have to sit on a phone or enter a ticket is certainly something we need to do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And there's another question for Helen. She says, "It's me again."
Hi,
So
Helen.
one of her questions would be, can you talk a little bit about on how you're partnering with ODLSS to provide technology solutions for diverse learners, both in the
No,
general.
that's a really good question. So I know that there's actually an effort underway with ODLSS and Dr. Jones to get brand new equipment to some of our diverse learner population. I don't know the exact number, but I know it's in the thousands, and I know that it's ongoing. Helen, I can't provide exact numbers now, but I will tell you that ancillary to all of the other device distributions and the synchronous learning equipment, the wide angle cameras, the speakers, the headphones, the power cords, everything that we've sent out is part of our main distribution. We are working with ODLSS on a specialized distribution for some of their students. We're also working to make sure that we have devices in some of our, for some of our testing locations, and we'll have some devices potentially at some of our vaccination locations. So there's a kind of a wide variety of partners and stakeholders we work with internally to make sure that, we're doing right and recognizing that there is variance in the different populations that we look to serve. In other words, when it comes to ODLSS, we definitely seek their guidance on assistive technologies. We want to make sure that whatever device we're putting in the hands of a diverse learner is suited to task. So yes, we absolutely work with that team to the extent that we can to make sure we're servicing our diverse learner population. Great question.
Thank you, Chief, for that. One of the things I see, like a comment in here, can you talk a little bit about before the student gets a computer, like what's the process for checking that the computer is working, that when the students get it, like that it's going to be ready to open and be ready for them to use?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that really varies by school and by device type. So if it's a brand new device, one of the things that we pay our partners for is to kind of do the imaging, make sure the CPS tools are on it, make sure that it's asset tagged so we can track it. But when you get a new device, it should be ready to use right out of the box. If there are devices that have been loaned out by the school that aren't new, and again, I want to go back to last February and March. We had to bring thousands of new pieces of equipment in, but we also know that the coffers aren't endless at CPS. So what we did was we largely leveraged a lot of existing equipment to the tune of 60 to 70,000 devices, because we paid for those devices. They're useful devices. We didn't want those sitting, collecting dust in a school and then buy all net new for students at home. So we largely leveraged what we had by way of existing inventory. And that's where you might have some variance in what was actually given out school to school. So one of the things that my team is actively doing is we're looking out there at the, kind of the machine IDs that are logging into our tools and trying to figure out who's logging in with a device that might be a little bit longer in tooth that we need to replace. We have the data that can help us make those decisions. We have to parse through a fair amount. It's not exactly clean, but we're doing everything we can to make sure if there is something that went out that, wasn't prepped, that, we can take care of it. I can tell you that we gave some best practices to principals, and by and large, from what we saw at schools, principals gave out the best devices that they had available to them, and that, to their credit. And, it was a mighty amount of work and a mighty amount of leadership from local schools, principals in the admin office, teachers helping out with those distributions. But again, when you talk about the devices that may have gone out the door that weren't new out of the box, you might get a little variance from place to place outside of some of the best practice guidance that we provided. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I think it does. Thank you for highlighting just the difference, right? We did buy new equipment, but we did have some that we were already in the school, and we were able to utilize that for the kids, especially at the beginning of this, right? We were trying to make sure that we got an equipment in the hands of those students so they can start doing learning. So thank you for that, just knowing those two differences and the amount of work that you guys did, and the principals and their clerk and their tech person, and trying to get these out to our students. So thank you so much for that. As we're getting close to like the end of our session, I do want to ask you, I know you gave a lot of information, a lot of great tips. We put some of those in the chat. We will send these out to everybody. We'll include the deck and all that good stuff. But what are some of the main things, the three main things I think that the you want parents to leave with today? If anything else, there's a lot of info. What are some of those three main points that you want parents to really take away from this?
Chicago Connected is real. And I don't mean to be trite. This is very important.
Yeah.
We have another 40,000 plus slots available for students. I cannot emphasize this enough. You've got 4 years of financing behind this program. We need to fill these seats. So if you hear about someone who might be disaffected or think that the program's not for them or it's a runaround, it's really not. And allow us to help you navigate if you're running into brick walls. And it also is instructive for us on where we need to do a better job. Voice of the customer is important to us. Yeah, I'd say that's number one. Number two, we're going to continue to support schools with devices. We're going to continue to do this. This is, I used the term green field before. Like we are embarking on kind of a new normal, and we're embarking on lots of new ways to conduct learning. And I would expect that the nature of our technology profile will continue to evolve and change, right? This starts to beg the question of, well, are these temporary loans, or are we going to start giving CPS students devices when they enroll, right? And I'm not saying that's necessarily where we're going, but, this is new, and it's going to beget lots of thoughtful dialogue about what tech in the classroom means moving forward. And I only ask that, engage with your local school, engage through your LSEs, and to the extent that you're interested or, have input on what that looks like, we're listening. And I would say finally, not necessarily a third to do, but just a thank you for everyone who joined today. I know it's difficult, particularly, in the bounds of traditional working hours, to take the time to listen in for a session like this. But it's enormously helpful for me to kind of hear directly from our parents about things you're concerned about, things we could do better. It's just been enormously useful, and I wanted to thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chief, for that. Yeah, and I'm going to echo what you said. I'm really grateful for our parents that have been joining us every week, coming with some really amazing questions and really giving us some feedback. So I totally appreciate that. Thank you so much. As the folks that are joining us, thank you so much for giving us your afternoon. I know it's Thursday. We have to cook dinner for the kiddos. The kiddos are ready to mommy and daddy to pay attention to them, right? So we want to thank you so much for joining us, giving us your time. Again, I will send all of these links via email tomorrow. If you have friends who were not able to join us, send them to that YouTube channel so that they can watch the video later on. It should be up, if not by Friday, Monday. So please visit our YouTube channel, and you can see all the rest of the videos that we have from As the Experts and other sessions that we're doing face-to-face. So thank you so much, Chief, for joining us. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.